As part of this assignment, I interviewed someone leadership. Um, the way that I selected the person that I interviewed was to choose someone outside of healthcare. And the reason for that is that my heroes were of the previous nursing generation, and much of nursing history that has been of interest to me is of the post-industrial generation. So the nurse heroes that I have mimicked or repeated or adopted their models of leadership are of an older generation and practice a style of leadership that probably is not the best applicable to the current state healthcare environment works. We've stressed through our learning, our materials, through our course materials, and our discussions, how important it is that we kind of leadership styles we take because of the evolution of our healthcare system. So they practice models of leadership that we could identify more applicable forms for our current environment. So I needed to stretch the type of mentoring that I'm looking for leadership was my goal. So with the goal of growing that new style of leadership, I reached out to a mentor outside of the health. And I did have the ability to interview Donna Baker. She is the General Affairs Officer at AFCO in Anderson. That is a local fuel pump company that is in Anderson. And she's officer, and in practicality, she's very much so the chief operations officer. So she is a lady that has went through a lot of leadership growth and pursued very rigorously the ability to grow her own leadership. So I really wanted to interview her on the idea of leadership and get some ideas from someone who's actually outside of the healthcare system. I did not get to actually speak with her in person to perform the interview because of her schedule being quite challenging. So she was very gracious to respond to some questions that I outlined for her to get her feedback. So one of the questions that I asked her was, what are the most important decisions that you make as a leader for your organization? And she replied that the decisions that she considers to be the most important are strategic, that have high impact to the company, and those that affect the associates. So she's really picking up on striving and then thriving on making high impact decision making. Those are what she considers the most important aspects of her leadership role. I also asked her, did you plan your move into leadership or your progression in leadership, or did you arrive at your position through certain inherent qualities that you possessed or pursued? So my goal of this question was in reflection of my decision to make a career plan and make action steps on my career plan instead of what I have done so far, which is to kind of stumble into my positions of leadership. I was trying to get that feedback on what her process has been in leadership. And she responded that my desire was to make a difference, and leadership allowed me to be in a position to have more opportunity to make a positive impact. I think there are certain qualities that are inherent, but you can also learn principles and techniques. So her statement on other recognizing her leadership potential before she did is similar to my own experience. So like I said, I discussed that I stumbled into my leadership roles, but her idea that you can learn things to add to your innate ability mirrors my goal to plan steps for my career and to try to apply new ideas, how to grow your idea of how you carry out leadership. I asked her, where do the great ideas come from in your organizations? I was trying to seek out if she valued teams-based approach. And she responded that great ideas come from people at all levels in the organization who are passionate about making a difference. This is similar to the idea of teams-based and horizontal governance being essential to outcomes-focused achievements. This again is the philosophy of letting talent experiment. Like I emphasized in creating the goals that for leadership that I developed, is to let others set their own outcomes, but to coach them through. That way, they have a lot more ownership and buy in and passion toward the outcomes when they can set them for themselves. So, focusing in on letting their talent shine through and making the best use and utilization of your resource, which are people and their talents. I asked, how do you help a new employee understand the culture of your organization? How do you communicate culture? This is a challenge for me. She replied, we begin sharing the uniqueness of our culture in the employment process so that the potential applicant can see if they align with the culture. We also include information about our culture in the associate handbook and new hire orientation. I think that setting the tone for team-based engagement is essential from the get-go. We know that creating culture is very difficult and falling into culture is very easy. So, as she's discussing here, if you can already lay the foundation and be very clear about how the culture of the internal processes work, how your organization functions, then that person can identify from the get-go what the expectation is going to be and how they're going to be expected to participate and take on ownership of their work. I also asked her, what are you doing to ensure you continue to grow and develop as a leader? So you've achieved quite a bit more leadership than I have had the opportunity. I was trying to find out if she continues to plan her career and how to grow as a leader, or if she feels as if she is in a position that she's achieved what she set out to do in developing leadership. She responded to me, I have an innate ability to continue to learn, grow, and develop professionally and personally. Through continuing my education, I've received my master's degree and 5 professional certifications. I'm currently enrolled in the Executive Development Program at Cornell University. I think it's also important to expand your knowledge by taking assignments outside of your normal scope and responsibility. So I have taken several special assignment projects, such as a plant startup in China, key manager, compensation manager in Detroit, and lead a function where I had North American responsibility. So leaders can grow and develop while at the same time giving back to the community. For example, I serve on the board of directors for a nonprofit. So her statement on taking assignments outside of the normality is important. I think it's good that I did reach out to someone outside of the healthcare environment, as we have discussed in our DNP courses, that nurses can be leaders in their community, just as she is a board member on a local nonprofit. This also aligns with the thought to look into participating in community leadership organizations in Anderson, which is one of the action steps that I set for one of my goals. She also discusses formal education as a necessity for growth, further strengthening the idea that DNP preparation is important for leadership roles and continuing to be intellectually stimulated as a key component of transformational leadership. I asked her, what pitfalls or regrets, if any, would you encourage young leaders to avoid? Meaning, what should I be watching out for? What is not going to help grow my leadership journey? She replied that I would advise you and find the value of networking. So this is right along the lines of one of my action steps, which was also to identify a mentor, one that you respect. To think further on this idea, it could be a good idea to have more than one mentor so as to capitalize on the strength of different styles of leadership and different experiences of leaders that you look up to. I asked her, finally, can leadership be learned? And she responded that I think leadership principles can be learned, but when the pressure is on and the stakes are high, people resort to their normal self, which isn't always a true leader. So Alavi and Gill in 2017 discussed in an article that you can find in my resources that authenticity is the most valued characteristic of employees of their leaders. They describe that authenticity is one of the most influential characteristics a leader can harness to facilitate positive attitudes toward change process in its followers. So perhaps it's in high intensity, high stress, as Donna was talking about here in her response, that resorting to your normal self is what is under the surface, and this is what is the desirability of authenticity. So, meaning leaders may not be able to apply forced or learned techniques in times of very high stress or very high intensity. And then what's going to be more authentic in those times is what innate leadership is. And that's going to be what resonates with people that you are trying to lead. So I hope to capitalize on some of my innate leadership ability, but through this process, I have definitely identified areas that I have room to grow. And I think it's also beneficial to have set goals in that area and be very intentional, because these techniques that you can learn in addition to your leadership have to be practiced so that you'll have more ability to apply them in times of high stress and not have to rely solely on the innate leadership that you have, but to be able to perform at a higher level, having already practiced so well techniques to apply to your innate leadership. So that summarizes my project for my self-assessment of leadership. Thank you.